Welcome to the Revolution Church podcast.
Oh, I'm gonna get my reading glasses. Good morning. That is a Schwinn, and it is a combination of a road bike and a BMX. So it's pretty cool. I took all the markings off of it, so it's flat black. I've had it for almost 20 years now. It's a pretty great bike. Haven't ridden it much around here. So my reading glasses broke. Well, it's good to be back. Hold on, I gotta turn my light on. Well, that's a little hot, huh? All right, everybody. Just trying to get everything together here. Hope you're well. I've been out of town, obviously. Had a few things come up. 2 weeks in a row. Thanks, Josh, for filling in on Easter Sunday. That was lovely of him. I was in Missouri, in Branson, Missouri. Kids are here today, so you might get cameos from Minnie and Milo. Here's it's Charizard. Hello, Charizard. Maybe I'll start doing stuff like this. What are you doing today? I've lost my mind. I have literally lost my mind. Lots of stuff going on. I don't even know where to start. I don't know where to start today. We've got swimming and dancing class today, so I'm excited about that. Let's see. Today's talk is going to be so right on the nose that it's going to be too right on the nose for me. So there you go. So I'm working on a doc right now that I can't talk a lot about because it's super secret, but it's about my mom. And I've been thinking a lot about her, as my whole family as well. My family, my parents and my sister, the four of us. Of course, my kids are definitely my family, and my ex-wife, who I had my kids with, are my family. But I've been thinking about, and P. Rollins obviously is like my brother, but and you are my family. But so I've been thinking about my mom and how well that she always handled criticism really well. I was always blown away by that. She could always, whatever situation she found herself in, she could just make it work. Like, that all things to all men, like Paul talked about. My mom could always do that with critics and with praise and with whatever, celebrities. It just always was something that she could handle really well, and I think my dad was really the opposite of that. And for me, I definitely have both of that. both of those things in me. So it's funny, like when I get criticism, sometimes it'll take me a little while to help work that out. Like have a discussion with somebody, have a long talk, and get to a place. It's not like this instant instinct for me, like it was with my mother. And so it's funny. I've had some critiques lately, and it's funny how they kind of stick in my head, even though I don't necessarily agree with them. But it's weird, and so I have to fight that a lot. You know, and I have to not, like, I want to like be like, hey, we're not a normal church, so don't expect a normal church, you know, type of thing. Don't expect that. We're, you know, technically we're not even a church right now. We're a community of people coming together, talking about how to figure things out, figuring out how to live life well, treat each other well, argue well, and bring unity. And yes, Christianity is the base from where I'm drawing this from. But I think you've got people like, you know, oh God, Russell Brand and people like that who are drawing from other wells, Christianity as well, but other wells of trying to say, like, the world is in a bad place. The world is, you know, divided. This country is really divided, and how can we not be so divided? And how can we be community? And I think that's what made my mom interesting, is that she always just walked through those lines. And I posted something on Instagram yesterday and on Facebook as well about my mom. When my parents lost everything and were kind of at their darkest hour, I remember they got tickets to Johnny Cash. Now, I was 11, so I don't think I even really knew who Johnny Cash was at the time, because they asked me if I wanted to go, and I was like, oh, tell me more about this man. And they said country, and then it was like, as soon as they said country, it was like, wah, 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 wah. But they just wanted a night out, feel normal, you know, so go see a show. And they went to that show, and, you know, this is where they're on every magazine, every, you know, Saturday Night Live's making fun of them, preachers are making fun of them, everybody's across the board not wanting to be identified with them. And so they just went to this concert just to see the show. And what's really cool is that that Johnny Cash saw my mom and dad in the audience and said some really kind things about them, but then had my mom come up and sing Old Rugged Cross with her. So, sorry, kiddos are coming out. I bribed them. My bribes don't work. But yeah, so it was one of those things where it was like, I feel like Johnny Cash had that similar spirit that my mom did, like where they were able to walk the line, if you will, of just loving people, you know. I wish there was a video of myself. I have. There may be a video out there. Maybe we can find it. But this idea that, you know, being able to love people even when they were at their most unlovable, being able to identify with the least of these, is something that I've always admired about Johnny Cash and my mother. But anyway, so I've just been thinking a lot about that, and it's funny how we all take criticism differently. Like, I think, like, I can remember mean things that people said to me 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Don't remember the person, but remember the thing they said, and it still sticks in the back of my head. You know, it's funny when you're like kind of a sensitive human being. And I think that was kind of the critique for me, is that I'm a bit sensitive, and it stuck in my head. It really did. Like, I was like, oh well, but this is me. I gotta be me, just like my mom said. So then she encourages me to be who I gotta be. So there you go. That's what I'm talking about a little bit today. But yeah, this talk's gonna be on the nose. Boop, boop, boop. This talk is going to be about the Prodigal Son. So, which I don't think I've talked about in a while, and it's in Luke 15, and from the looks of it in my Bible, I haven't spoke about it, at least not out of this Bible, because there's not a lot of highlights, and I usually go a little bit nuts with highlights. Yeah, guys, I've had a tough couple of weeks, and the funny thing is the critique was I complained. Well, here I am. Guess what? Get ready. You guys are my therapists. Video therapy. But it's been a oh God, it's been a tough week, guys. It's not been longer than a week. Um, and I'm always try to be transparent because I feel like is what I'm called to do as with this work. I think it's more important to be transparent than to pretend like you're something you're not. But like this week, this past week, I went to Missouri to meet with my dad, to try to meet with my dad, and I had to have a lot of conversations with people about meeting with my dad before even meeting, and if he would even meet with me. And I ended up finally getting an invitation to Easter dinner. But my best mate, Pete, was with me to kind of be there for moral support. And then he wasn't invited. And it kind of hit me in a way where I was like, I don't want to go somewhere where my best friend is not invited. And so I didn't. So I tried to reschedule and say, hey, listen, can we just... Because it was a family thing. It was a whole bunch, Pete's family to me, So I was like, why don't we meet the next day? It'll just be us. We'll do coffee. And it didn't work out. So I went up to Missouri for 5 days, but I did get to spend some time with my sister, and she's great, and we had a good time. And, but yeah, it was really tough for me. I've spent most of my life defending my dad. I've spent a lot of my life really trying to love him, even though we have big disagreements. And so it's been tough. So I thought maybe I would just go through the Prodigal Son today and look at it in a different way, but I've also got another story to go along with that. So, it's funny because we were in Branson, which is such a wild place, man. If you've ever been there, it's like, it's really wild. And I don't think I've ever seen Pete so stressed out in his life. It's like, welcome to the Baker family. We stress people out quite a bit. But also, I don't want to live my life with like that. My mom was very different. Like, one of my closest friends, back in the day especially, was my friend Chuck. And when I lived in Atlanta, and me and Chuck really loved cigars, and we loved hanging out. And Chuck was a Satanist, and loved horror movies, and long black hair and pentagrams on his elbows. And at one point, he had a casket in his house. Super cool dude. He did a Bible with pyramids all on the cover for me. It's around here somewhere. And I remember, even after when he did it, he's like, yeah, when I was making that Bible for you, even I felt a little weird. I was like, am I supposed to be doing this? I was like, yes, it looks cool. But his mom had passed. And so during the holidays, he didn't have family to go to. And my mom was like, bring Chuck here. And my mom and Chuck became really good friends. And Chuck came home for holidays, and we went to the same pool hall, and we hung out, and Chuck brought his girlfriend, and she was wild too. And, we just did it. It was just family. We wasn't thinking about it. You know what I mean? There wasn't discussions of if we can meet or if we can't meet or, any of that kind of thing. And I loved that about my mom. That was something I greatly miss about her. But anyway, I went to Branson. It was very disappointing, and I came home, and I, you think, should I have gone? Should I have done that? Should you get regrets? You're going to, am I being stubborn as well? All that kind of stuff. But you got to trust your instincts. And of course, I came home, and I've had this tooth that's been hurting for years, and it just decided to completely give out. Maybe because of the stress, it was like. And so I came home, and I was just in so much pain. The whole right side of my face hurt. And so I had to go to, and I don't have insurance for dental because I decided to wait till next year for dental and got vision this year. which will be a good thing once I get my eye. I have an eye exam. I had to reschedule it because it was during my Branson trip. So I had to reschedule it, and this place that I have to go to is so busy that I don't have an appointment until next month. But anyway, so I had to go in and spend a bunch of money getting a tooth pulled, and it hurt like hell. And I haven't had solid food since Wednesday because they had to do bone grafts, and so I can't drink. I mean, I can't use a straw. I can't eat any solid food, and so if I seem a little shaky today, a little bit out of it today, it's because I've been living on like smoothies and milkshakes, so I don't feel like super awesome, and I've been on full-time dad duty as well. And luckily the stitches are starting to come out, which is a good thing, because he had to do it. It was so close to the back here to my cheek that it went into my cheek that I wasn't even allowed to like really talk like with my mouth fully open. So I've been like this, like, cut it out, kids. Hey, let's go do this. You know, it's been like ventriloquist week. So when it rains, it pours. I'm tired. I'm really tired. I'm really worn out. But I wanted to, you know, I've had to have cancel one service. Somebody else fill in, and I didn't want to cancel today. I wanted to talk to you guys today. Then I wanted to bring a talk that I think comes straight from my guts and straight from where I'm at. And I think it's a place where a lot of us are at, you know, because often when I talk about grace and stuff, a lot of people say, well, I don't want to show grace to that one person or to this group or to that. And because those are the people who wounded me or wounded the folks that I love. And, you know, they're the ones why I'm damaged. And I don't want to go back into that damage. And I've really tried always to, in my own life, and that's why I encourage other people to do it, is always kind of, my mom used to have this album called Run to the Roar, you know, and it's a big lion head, and she's like, it's a cute album cover. And so I've kind of always had that thing is like, oh, there's the roar, there's the scary thing, there's the conflict. I'm going to run towards it. And probably growing up in conflict made me more comfortable to do that, you know. It's funny though, it's like in my personal life, I've always kind of had more of an issue with conflict with one-on-one, but sometimes grace just abounds, and I'm going to go towards that conflict. But I have to say this is often even when you go towards that conflict with grace, with mercy, you don't get it back. You don't always receive it back, you know. And that's just the reality of it. It's a tough walk. And that's, so I say all that because I want you guys to be able to know, like, when I ask you to do this and when I encourage you to do this stuff, and we've had pushbacks before, but I've seen some of you guys do this like better than I do. I've seen you guys practice this arguing well and going into uncomfortable situations and all this stuff we talk about. So some of you are actually practicing this in a deeper sense than even myself. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see. I mean, it makes me cry sometimes. It touches me deeply. And of course, some of us don't get it, and that's okay because it takes time. You know, you got to put in the hard work to kind of get there, and I get that, you know. I've had to put in the hard work. I've been doing this for 26 years. So where do we do? Let's just jump in. Let's see if there's something there or not, really. How about that? I think my camera's a bit high today. And I have one of these like really comfortable couches that slowly sinks over time. So I'm like, and so anyway, Luke 15, 11. What I like about this version is, you know how they put they name the verses? This one they said, the parable of the prodigal son and his brother, which is more head-on than just the prodigal son. So I like that. Then Jesus said, and Jesus had all these crazy teachings, as you know. Then Jesus said, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of the sons said to his father, Father, give me my share of property that will belong to me. Now, this was basically saying to your father at this time, historical context, and people who were hearing this would have understood this, is you're saying, I don't want to wait for you to die. I want everything that's owed to me now. And basically, I wish you were dead because just give it to me so I can go live my own life. And this is what's happening here with the prodigal son. So the father divides his property, and usually that didn't happen either. Usually the father would be like, you've disgraced this family, leave. So the father divides the property that will belong to me. So he divided his property between them, the two sons. A few days later, the young son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country. And there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout the country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens in the country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would have gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and because no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough to eat and to spare? But here I am dying of hunger." One of the things I've always liked about this story is because that's been interesting to me, and in just a simplistic view of the story, is just the son leaves and fails. And the only reason he's returning home is because he made bad investments. Had he succeeded, he would have just never returned. And I always think like the motives. People always ask, well, what's the motivation here? And what I like about this story is that the son's motivation is not really that pure. It's just, I've got nowhere else to go, and I'm trying to do this. And if I worked for my dad, at least I'd be able to eat a little bit more. I mean, he was thinking about his basic needs, like, I'm just hungry. And the servants are treated better there. So maybe if I go back and make a deal with him, I can have some sort of a life, because I screwed up. And, in a way, I always kind of feel like maybe that's what parents are for, I think that's what, I think that's what people in the church are for, is that we're there. That's what I liked about the 12-step program, is it was like, maybe I'll try to give this drinking one more chance, You come back and you're like, it didn't work. Like, great. Let's start working again, Let's do this. So I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy of being called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands." So he set off and went to his father. Now, what I like also about this verse is that he's got a plan to make a deal. He's going to make a deal with his dad. Like, he's got his repentance speech worked out. And it's so much like society. Like, he feels like his father is like society. Like, I've got to make a public apology. I've got to show my shame. I've got to bear this. I'll say I've disgraced you. I am not worthy of your love, And everybody's like, oh, that would be good, Will Smith needs to come out and make a public apology, and all these people need to come out and make public apologies so we know that they're really sad. It's not enough just to hear about it. We need to know, because for some reason our opinions really matter, and we are the gatekeepers of publicity and public lifestyles and stars and human lives. It's like, it's crazy. We are the ultimate judges, so come repent to us. Remember when Jimmy Swaggart had his spell back in the 80s, and he came out and he cried and he was like, I've sinned against you, I've done this horrible thing, and what did people do is they just made fun of him for it. They're like, this guy, he got what he deserved, blah, blah, blah. It's like, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, really, in this world often. And I think that's what we don't realize, is that, and it's like people in in this time and day and age, we're blown around like, like leaves on the ground. It's like our opinions change and what we think is, it's like, what was a hot hashtag a few years ago now is different. It's like how Johnny Depp would be, what he's going through with his divorce and all this stuff when he was accused of, back, a few years ago, it was like, believe all these people. Now it's going like, well, maybe it's not that simple, because maybe what happened is it reversed here. You know what I mean? So it's like we continuously learn that life is complex and that there's no like broad strokes that really work well. That maybe we have to be open to nuances and differences, and things are complicated and life is complicated, right? So here the son's got this plan, and this is my favorite part, has always been my favorite part, is so he sets off and he went to his father, but while he was still off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion and ran, putting his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven before you. I am no longer worthy of being your son." But the father said to his servants, or to his slaves, okay, well, there's something that's not popular. Father had slaves. Maybe he should have stayed away. But anyway, the point is that the son comes, he has this whole spiel ready to beg for forgiveness. And yet the father is like, he's like, "Father, I'm not worthy." And the father just turns away from him and is like, I love that. Like, but his father grabs him, hugs him. "Oh, Dad, I'm so sorry." And the father's like, "Oh, shut up." Turns around and he says, "Get the guards, have them carried out and killed." No, whipped in front of the whole community, which probably would have been more likely what something would have happened, because he brought shame onto his family. But the father said to his slaves, "Quickly bring out the robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals and on his feet, and get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is now alive again. He was lost and is now is found." And they began to celebrate. Now, Pete Rollins has a very different reading of this, and I really recommend, if you can find Pete's reading of the Prodigal Son, it's really interesting and different. It's a very radical theological look at it, and I recommend listening to it because it kind of gives you a completely different perspective, and I think other eyes are great for this. But that's not my perspective today. So this happens. The son's forgiven. But obviously, there's a party going on, but he has a brother. The good brother. The brother who stuck around and said, "Hey, I'm here." And so the brother hears this noise and this celebration going on. And let's see what the brother says. Now his elder son was in the field, and when he came and he approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked, "What is going on?" He replied, "Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has got him back safely and sound." Then he became angry and refused to go in. There's not a whole lot said here about the brother, but I honestly say, you know what, I totally get this as well. And I feel like we have a very older brother vibe online and with social media. It's so really crazy that I never thought social media would be so influential on our daily lives, and everybody's opinion, and on mainstream media. I can't ever tell which one's dictating the other. I didn't realize it would be so powerful, but it has really become huge. And I feel like we live in this world where we're all like, wait a second, I need an explanation here. Wait a second, this isn't fair. And I think that's one of the great things, too, about some families is when they like for me, if my own son became a serial killer or something like that, I would be there constantly with him, seeing him. I mean, of course I would be horrified, but I would be like, I will always love you no matter what. My daughter as well, of course, so it's like, and other people I love, people, bad things happen to good people. It's just life. People make bad decisions, really bad decisions sometimes. And that's part of life. That's why I say grace is anarchy, because it doesn't please everybody. There's always a system that it's kind of pushing against, There's always going to be the hurt party, the offended party, who's like, I don't know if this is where grace deserves. But what I found with what's great about grace in that way is that if you are the offended party, maybe you go like, well, you know what? I'm hurt, but I'm grateful that they're getting grace. Like someone's got to give them grace, and it's not going to be me because I just don't have it in my bandwidth. I don't have this person does my head in. And actually seeing this person being forgiven, it kind of does my head in. But I know that this is how it best works. I know that this is how we learn from our mistakes and we grow as a community. And maybe there'll be a time where I can deal with this. So I've always been grateful for people who've shown grace and mercy to the folks that I can't. And why there's different parts of the body. Why is there different parts of the community? Because honestly, it could drive us insane if it was all fell on our shoulders, there's some people that you're just like, hey, this is not the community for you, but there's great communities out there, and helping them find that community and realizing that, like, there's just certain needs we can't meet, and unfortunately, often people leave angry. And my always thing is like, don't leave angry, just leave going like, hey, this isn't the right community. And that's okay, that's cool, now but it's hard. It's like with relationships, you learn through maybe different breakups or divorce, and those aren't easy lessons to learn. They are hard, and they're painful. They're really, really painful. But hopefully we do learn from that pain and from those things and go, okay, well, in the future, I need to be a little less this, and maybe I need to look for someone who's a little bit more this, It's very simplified, but hopefully that's how our brains work. But unfortunately, our unconscious sometimes likes us to repeat mistakes over and over again. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when the son of yours comes back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you kill the fatted calf for him. Now, I would say that this is a human reaction. This is a total, this reaction makes sense, to be honest with you. Like, I've seen this happen before, and when you're like, I've been in situations like this where you're like, dude, I'm the loyal one here. I've been loyal forever, like, what the hell's going on here? And that's what makes grace so interesting. And that's where you have to kind of go like, oh, grace hurts when we're seeing it given to people we don't want it seen given to. Grace is unfair. This is the realities of grace. But this is also how you build bigger communities, through reconciliation. And reconciliation is tough work. And what I think, honestly, is that we don't want to put the work in there. Now, there's the other side of that. And I feel like it's something that I'm dealing with right now in my own life is I've done the work in a situation with my father. And that opportunity just isn't happening. And so in a way, I have to walk away and go, the ball is in his court. There it is. And that's a tough thing for me to do, folks. It is really tough. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more here in a minute. But it is really tough for me to say, like, I have to wipe the dust off, whatever you do, dust the feet, get my dust off my shoes, and move on and continue to do my work. but at the same time, it's very painful. And I think we often think, well, I'm going to just, screw that person. Sorry, I'm dropping the F-bomb like crazy today. You can tell I'm tired because I usually don't like to do that because it just brings up too many side arguments. But you usually like kind of like, screw them. I'm moving on. People think that it's a heartless thing to do sometimes. But sometimes it's the most graceful thing you can do. Is not responding, or at least not responding out of pain and anger, and also being graceful to yourself and knowing, like, for me, I've had to learn this through seeing a psychoanalyst, is that I have to go, I had to see what I could get if this could happen, and when it didn't happen, I have to continue to live my life because I'm a father. I have to be a good father to my kids. I have to be a good pastor or leader, for the lack of a better term, with you guys. A part of this community, as a leader of this community, I have to do that. And so I have to realize that there's certain things that you have to say, you have to do, and decisions you have to make. My kids found my whistle, and they're blowing my whistle. You killed the fatted calf for him. The father said to him, "Son, you are always with me, and all this is mine is yours." But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has become to life. He was lost and has been found. Now, I would say that right there, he was lost and has been found, is how we should celebrate when people come back and repent or whatever. I'm always weary when I hear, especially people who follow Christianity. I'm very weary when they say, and I wonder what book, honestly, I'm like, what faith are you, how do you miss this part of the faith, is when people do come back and say, I've screwed up, I've made a huge mistake. I should have never done that, or I should have never written that, or I should have never said that. We go, oh, it's too late. Because the one thing that I found about Christianity is why I think it's a really exceptional faith and religion, is that it's never too late. I honestly think that's why Hegel thought that Christianity was he picked that as his favorite religion. And honestly, I've picked Christianity as my favorite religion because if I didn't, I would be doing something else. I'd be practicing another religion. But the goal has been that it's never too late, never ever. But knowing how to do that and how to walk through that maze in difficult times, and how to show grace in those difficult times, and it's tough. I know a lot of you folks who don't talk to your folks and don't talk to your parents, but what I want to do is that I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can at the same time, taking care of myself and respecting myself. And I think we've got to figure out how can we make sure that we do everything we can to show grace, to show love, to show mercy, but at the same time, realize when it's not our job anymore. When it's our job to maybe say, we got to step back and focus on other folks, other things, other situations. But man, it's tough. Zoe and me always used to talk about like loving from afar, because we realize like there are people that just devastate you, and loving from afar until you can love close. And I've seen Zoe actually do that in their life, which has been pretty amazing, to go from loving from afar to going back into situations that I don't even really go into. Like, I'm not walking back into churches being like, hey, I'm here, let's talk, Yeah. But maybe I will. I would like to, if I get invited. I'm actually going to be speaking at a church in Minneapolis, June 5th, which I'm really excited about. So I'll tell you more about that later. But one of the things I was writing in my notes, and I did a little tweet today, if you saw it, was I was thinking about Star Wars, Empire, Return of the Jedi, and Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, son and father, obviously. And I was thinking about that situation at the end where, everybody, like Yoda, Ghost Yoda, or Yoda dies, but Yoda and Obi-Wan are both like, you got to kill him. You got to kill Darth Vader. Yeah, but he's my dad, And then they start talking like, well, what if he isn't willing to do it? And they're like, well, if you don't do it, then you've lost. You're done. And then they say, oh, there is another. And that's when we find out Leia's Luke's sister. Spoiler alert, 30 years later. But they're like, you've got to do this. And when Luke is in that moment, but he goes, I still feel good in him, and everybody's like, that's a little sad. Like Jedis are pretty stringent. Like if you watch even the prequels, which now everybody appreciates because the sequels were so bad. If you watch the prequels, you see that part of what's driving Darth Vader is that he wants to have a family. He wants to love people. Anakin Skywalker. He wants to be with these, he wants kind of a normal life. And everyone's like, you're special, you're special, you're special. And if you've got to live the Jedi way, and it's almost like he's kind of pushed by both sides to go into the direction that he does, because it's not like the Jedi are perfect, And I think we could come to see the Jedi as the church at this point, And everybody being like, you're the next Billy Graham. But instead he becomes Darth Vader and kills younglings, which, But yeah, so you see that it's not all black and white. And now they're all like, oh no, now you got to kill your dad. Like the Jedi is just like cut and dry, black and white. Like this is it. There's no other choice. Either you kill him or you become him. And what does Luke do? Is he does pretty much what I think I would have to do if I really wanted to talk to my dad. Is he sneaks into the Death Star, he gets arrested. They two end up being in the same room, and they are fighting because he refuses to join the dark side. And but Luke tries to reason with his father. I mean, you've probably seen this movie. I've seen it like 500 times. So, and this is the best part of Return of the Jedi, really. And it happens. In his moment of need, he cries out, Father! And the Emperor's like shooting him with like force lightning, and he's like, Father, save me! And it clicks. And that moment of hell, and that moment of desperation, the son cries out, and the father picks up the Emperor and throws him off of into a mine shaft or some sort of Death Star shaft, and kills him and saves him. And then Luke tries to save the father. He's carrying this huge machine down. I've got to save you. I've got to save you. You've got to come with me. And you see all the stormtroopers. It's chaos. And you see Luke just dragging their old boss, who they're probably all like, thank God that guy got it, because he force choked everybody. So he's like dragging him down. And, the father goes, take my mask off. And he goes, if you take the mask off, you'll die. And he goes, it doesn't matter. I'm going to die anyway. I'm already dead. But you've already saved me. And it's kind of a beautiful moment in redemption. It's a totally beautiful moment of grace, because, I mean, you could really, like, if you held Star Wars in any reality, like this, Darth Vader was a very Hitlerish type of person, like the person that no one would want to forgive in the galaxy. Yet the son had this moment of grace and compassion, and it was that was a deathbed confession, but you've saved me. I am alive. There is, Anakin is here, and he sees his humanity and recognizes it. And it's because he goes, I'm not going to be a Sith. I'm not going to be a Jedi. I'm going to take the third way. And what it does is, unfortunately, I think the sequels to that movie really kind of screw up Luke a little bit. But maybe Luke just got jaded from showing too much grace because he's human. But I don't like the sequels that much about it, because I feel like it's like Luke said, I'm taking the third way. I'm taking the way that the road less traveled. I'm not going to subscribe to either religion. I'm not going to be right or left. I'm not going to be binary. You know, I'm going to take this decision to just the moment of, I'm going to take the road less traveled. And to me, that's really beautiful, because the effect is not the effect. Like Darth Vader was going to probably die. The point was that he dies. And he dies either way in this scenario. And it's not the change that it has so much on Vader, because Vader doesn't come back and make himself better and destroy all the bad guys. Vader dies. But it's what it does to Luke. It's the effect that it has on Luke. And that Luke's being able to be beyond the Force. You know, it doesn't matter if he can move things with his mind at this point. It doesn't matter if he can wield the lightsaber, you know. None of that matters. What matters is that he saw the good in something that no one else could see the good in, and he chose to follow that path. And that's who he is. He's above Jedi. He's above Sith. And that's a beautiful story, because I think sometimes some of us are in the point of our lives where we're stuck between our faith, and maybe it's a more progressive faith or more conservative faith or whatever, but there's the choice that we have to make, and sometimes we have to do something that's above that. It's the God that we find when the God of our understanding disappears. You know, the God above God, the God that appears when the God of our understanding dies. And Tillich talks about this. And I think that's what you see in Star Wars. I think that's what you kind of see in what Jesus is talking about in this story as well. You know, but for me, in this, what I wrote in my notes, this was the hard part, is they're singing. So I leave and I'm hurt, and obviously I go, all right, this is the road that I have to go on. And I feel bad because it's not even the Luke Skywalker road that I'm going on or whatever. Because I leave and I go, I want to give up. And I'm walking away. And that's a tough thing to do. It's a tough thing to walk away and say, I have to move forward in my life. It's very, very tough. And it's a situation, it's a choice I didn't want to make, but it was a choice I did make. I could have gone to the lunch and I said, Pete, you stay here. This is you know, I got to do whatever I got to do to make this happen. But instead I followed my heart. I followed my instinct of who I am and how I live life. And it's a hard decision to make. It's a painful decision to make. And I wrote down here, I want to give up, and I walked away. And even in all of this, it's so funny. I was watching the Instagram today, and it might have been today or it was yesterday, and there's this like gay Christian Instagram account, and this guy was talking about my dad and about like, oh, Jim Bakker, I've held my tongue, but Jim Bakker's gone too far and shouldn't have said this and shouldn't have done this and shouldn't have said, you know, and he's a bad man. And it was funny because my initial instinct was to go in and say, well, one, why do you watch the shit? And you watch the shit so you can talk shit. And what about, what, you know, let's talk about my mom, you know, and what about my work? And what about this? And why do we have to like always look at, you know, this, you know, like, do you think my father's really still influencing humans that much? But anyway, or part of me also wanted to be like, yeah, you're right, blah, 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 you know. But I just didn't do it. I had to unfollow. I was like, you know what? This is just, I've got to move forward in my life. But I still had that instinct to say, I still feel that good. I still feel something's there, you know, because I knew my father through prison, and there was a big connection there. And I knew his work in the 80s, and there was something that I saw that was different than what most people saw and what most people judged him for. I think the guy even said ex-con, and that drives me crazy. It's like, are we always going to, you know, when people do their time, do we still hold that against them as Christians? Is that what we're called to do? Like, there's so many contradictions happening within my own mind and my own heart at that moment. And once again, I had to go, boom, I'm just going to have to move forward. And that's a tough place to be. And I'm going to be figuring that out over the next few months and weeks as I work on this documentary, as I continue to work on my theology, and grow within this, because having theology and knowing the scripture and having philosophy is great when it's in your mind, but it's like, how does this operate within real life? And always wanting to make sure that this operates within real life, if that's something that I'm going to bring here to you guys. So this is always a process. And so what I want to let you know today is that if there's been a time in this, you followed Revolution and thought, oh, he's asking too much. You know, he keeps asking us to do all this stuff. You know, hey, I'm flesh and blood as well. I've had, there's moments where I can't. And I want to, I really do. But it's not even an opportunity available to me. And so I want to apologize too if there's some of you out there who just have been in the same place and maybe I pushed you a little too hard. That was never my intention. But we all are growing and learning together through this. And yeah, it's tough. And I see, I wish I had new glasses yet, because I see a lot of you guys writing stuff about different things. And I'm sure you're all going through different experiences. And I'm sure a lot of you are like, yeah, screw him. I understand all those reactions. I just don't have black and white feelings. My emotions just don't work that way. And I probably got that from my mother and through trying to understand Hegel and trying to embrace contradiction. And I'll always hold that, And like I said before, like it's maybe not my job to speak out. Maybe it's the gay Christian Instagram post. Maybe it's their job to speak out right now, because this is too close to me. So I can't really speak out about it. So like I needed them to do their job. But at the same time, I probably don't need to listen to them do their job, because it affects me in a different way than it's going to affect anybody else who's hearing it, So I have to draw boundaries in my own life to continue to grow and move forward to maybe so one day I can lift those boundaries or put those boundaries in concrete to go forward. But right now, I'm in that process of learning and going through something that I've never gone through before. So, things change when you've lost your mom and when you have kids and when it's family. Grace even gets stranger then. That's when you really feel the anarchy coming through. And you're going, I hope somebody else can show the grace. I hope somebody else can take the grace. I hope someone can put the grace on their shoulders and carry that forward. Bob, I see you keep asking that question. It's Lawrence Richardson's church where I'm talking. I don't remember the name of his church, but it's Lawrence's church. So I'm doing my best to move forward, folks. And I'm sharing this with you because that's all I got. And I want it to work. So maybe it's the prodigal father at this point. Because I'm going to, if I see him coming down the road, I'm willing to embrace and have the tough conversations. I wish I had his ear, because honestly, if I did, I'd be talking even about some of these things that those folks were complaining about, but I'd be talking in a personal way, going like, this is why I don't think this is productive, and this is why I think it's hurtful, and because I could have that ear, because he's not watching Instagram posts or Facebook posts or what anybody else says. And that's the other thing, is like why I've never denounced him or anybody, other people, is because I always hope that I'm able to sit down and have those difficult conversations. But now that's not my job. My job is this. My job is to be a dad. My job is to be here and to be a good speaker, theologian, and to make a really great documentary that will be based about my mother, mostly focused on my mother, but my family and what that was like to grow up and what they are like, and what it was like to go through a situation where everyone cancels you. And then, mom dies, and then movies come out, and then people celebrate her years later. So we're all living in a really, really tough time, in a tough world. And I hope we can all learn to kind of embrace these contradictions a little bit more and be there for each other. That's one of the things I appreciated, is like Zoe was there for me through this. I'm thinking about you. I love you, buddy. I know this is tough, and Steve Peters was like, hey, buddy, I love you. If you need me, I'm here. If you don't, whatever, but just know you're loved. I know this isn't easy. Randy from Open Door Community Church on the phone. My friend Connie Waters texting me. Connie has a sixth sense. She knows when anything's wrong, and all of a sudden I get these weird texts. And Pete went with me. So I'm grateful to have people in this community who I know love me and care about me, and outside of this community as well. So I guess that would be my encouragement, is to be those people. The older brother needs a friend to listen as well. The older brother is going like, this makes no sense to me. He needs more than just the father begging him to come in. He needs friends going like, let's talk about this. And why this hurts. So see, even that is taken further with grace. Even that is taken to another level. That's when I say we go beyond even what the verses of the scriptures say, like, oh, there isn't a script for this. What is the script? I usually find out is when there's no script is grace. And sometimes if someone's saying, well, the scriptural answer isn't grace, I go, well, then grace is the answer. That grace is always the trump card to that. But it's just who's going to use that card and who's able to use that card. Because sometimes we need to know what our calling is and who can be there. And I really do hope that someone will be able to reach out to people who I can't reach out to and show love and show grace and mercy and hope and have tough conversations. But I'm pretty broken right now. So I'm always dealing with that. I'm always dealing with being broken and healing and being broken again. That's just life. And grace is messy. And I'm the king of messy. I wear a pin. I literally ordered like 5 of them. This is I'm a mess. Sid Vicious used to wear this shirt that said I'm a mess. I kind of mean it in a different way, but I'm a mess, but I embrace. There's something about that I embrace as well. Because in order to have this ability to do these type of things and to show grace, some areas in my life are always going to be messy. Because that's what grace brings, a mess with it. It always, you're always going to have a mess. You're always going to have conflict. You deal with one conflict here, and then you need to show grace over here because somebody's angry that you showed grace. It's like, this is why the Father's going to come in, because like, I showed grace here. He's like, well, now my son's upset. Now I've got to give him grace, and I've got to give him love. It's like whack-a-mole. Grace is always leading to another situation that's going to require even more grace, and but also require us as humans to know who we are and what we're called to do. And that's why I hope that other people are doing their part. That's why I always give hard times to some of my to some of my more some of my friends are like, oh, I'm red letter Christian. I don't like to read the Paul. I'm always like, well, these letters aren't Paul, but you need to read these letters that are Paul because there's so much grace there, and that grace is such an amazing thing. You need to understand this, And why I go to my more conservatives are like, oh no, I can't question the pastoral epistles. Like you really should, because it kind of screws up grace. We got to do more grace. We got to show more grace because we need everybody together doing this. It's not Batman. I'm not Batman. I thought I was for a long time, but I'm taking the damn mask off, because I want to be in a community. I don't want to be the Lone Ranger anymore. And that's why we need each other. Right? That's why this is community. This is why it's a gathering. 2 or more gather. That's why we gather together. Is because we need each other. Because grace is not a one-man job or a one-woman job. Thanks, everybody. Listen, if you like what you're getting out of this, if you can go to revolutionchurch.com and help us out through a donation, that would be great. It keeps this community alive, keeps us going, allows me to do this. And I'm trying to get this leadership group together, but we all have such crazy schedules that we haven't got a meeting together. But I've got some ideas of things that I think we're going to do in the future that's going to be really cool. And we'll bring more of a presence to this, and do some things at YouTube, and do some classes, and do some things like that. And those are some ideas that I'm excited about. And I do want to thank you, because this past month, you guys have really given a lot, helped support us, and thank you for that, because it's made a huge difference. I had this emergency bill come up, and I hadn't had a full paycheck in in a couple years, and I had full paycheck this month, and I was able to make that extra cost for that not having insurance. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you, everyone. We love you. Talk to each other. Talk about this. If this talk encouraged you, please share it. Tell your friends about it. Should be up on YouTube on Wednesday, and everywhere else on Wednesday is all the podcasts on Wednesday. Share it. Tell people about it. Go on social media. Tell people about what we're doing, so more of us can work together, so we can have a bigger community, so we can get this work done. And we can teach people how to show grace, how to show love, and how to argue, and argue well, and practice restoration, and practice love, and maybe help each other out a little bit. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. To make your 100% tax-deductible donation today, please visit revolutionchurch.com/donate. You can also learn more by clicking the donate section on the website.